Welcome to State of Ed, a podcast about education inside the classroom and out. My name is Marc.
And I'm Nick Simone.
How you doing today, Nick?
Uh, Very good. Excited about today's show. Yourself?
Very excited about today's show. And we'll get to the little surprise in a couple of minutes. But there's some big news in the world of education here in New York. First and foremost, the beloved Pearson, they are out the door. So I know you were the one who brought this to my attention. Can you shed a little light on this for us?
When I read the article, what was very impressive is that the new education commissioner made it very clear that teachers will be much more involved in the process for creating these tests that are being used to evaluate everybody. And I think that was one of the big criticisms. Well, there are many criticisms of Pearson, but I know that teachers on every level, and it's mostly, I think, 3 through 8, right? Third grade through 8th grade, Mark?
Predominantly.
Yeah. Teachers just felt as if they were. I mean, there was a story, I think you referenced the John Oliver one, where they were advertising on Craigslist to get people to grade exams.
That's right.
So I think Pearson is an example of a company that, would you say, got very big very quickly and didn't handle it well?
Well, they definitely didn't handle it well, or they really ticked off the wrong person
Right.
someplace. But this wasn't just in New York. They've been shown the door in a few states so far. I know Texas had shown them the door, and I think Florida, if I'm not mistaken. But you know what really I thought was fascinating? They showed the numbers in this article. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. The numbers, the amount of money in New York was not particularly high. It was only $44 million. Not that that's nothing, but wouldn't you think that in a state the size of ours that these kinds of numbers would be much more like the Texas numbers? I mean, their contract was $280 million for 4 years. I just figured it would be something along those lines. I didn't think it would be that little. Not that that's nothing, but
I
in the
think
scheme of things.
I'd have to do more research. It's, the numbers. I mean, it sounds like a lot of money, but I understand what you're saying in comparison. And I
Yeah.
really don't know anything about the new company, Questar. I guess they're from Minnesota or based in Minnesota, but they have
We've
offices
used
upstate.
we've used some Questar materials in the past. I can't remember off the top of my head exactly what we used, but I remember the Questar label, and I can't remember in what capacity. But so I can't say if it was good or not, or what the experience was like. But I do remember seeing the name.
Well, I know I often, when I talk about testing, I always go back to how the advanced placement tests are run. And over a year before they change curriculum in AP, they provide teachers with a full length practice exam. And then when the teachers said they needed more, they came up with more questions to share with people. So I hope that if we're going to continue with this testing culture, which I know we're not a big fan of, that the new company will at least do a better job of giving teachers adequate materials and test materials. You can't give test prep materials. You have to show them, teachers, what the exam's going to look like.
Well, the question now becomes, will they show this to us, or will we have
Right.
to purchase these materials? Because let's be honest, I mean, that's the end game. If you can control the test, then you can control the prep materials, and that's where the big money is. It's like when you go to buy a car, when you go to the showroom, everything looks really pretty, but the real money is made in the back, where they're doing all the work on, the oil changes and then the engine work and everything else. That's where they're really cranking out the big bucks.
Yeah. Well, we'll find out.
What was also interesting, very quickly, is that Pearson was the vendor for the Park exam, and everyone was getting all Park crazy that every student was going to be taking his or her exam on a computer within the next few years, and that kept getting pushed back and pushed back. Now I wonder what's going to happen with the Park exam altogether. Will it be gone, or will Questar pick up and start running with the Park, or will that be gone? It's interesting, and what's amazing is, despite all of these changes, the state is still pushing forward with the value added model. So, like, on one hand, everything's changing. On the other hand, they're doubling down on what's in the process of being changed, which again speaks to the brilliance of the individuals up at the state. And I know that was something else we want to talk about quickly, was the piece that Carol Burris, who is the, well, I guess now former principal at Rockville Center on Long Island, a very, very outspoken individual against everything, all the insanity going on in the state. And she wrote a really interesting blog post, and we'll put a link to that as well. and she was discussing the value added model.
Yeah,
Can you,
and I
yeah.
think she posted, but it was from somebody else.
It was Valerie Strauss's article
Okay,
in the
good.
Post. Well, I have to say, I have to give her some credit. Valerie Strauss is really on top of it. She's really kind of got her finger on the pulse of what's going on and bringing a lot of interesting things to light.
Are you implying that the Newsday education writers on Long Island do not have their pulse on it?
I will not say anything disparaging against those individuals, since we're only like 30 seconds away from being a feature article in Newsday at any given moment.
Exactly. So,
But
well, I don't
Carol
think...
Burris's article was, or post was very interesting. Also, just railing against the value-added model and talking about how there's been a flip-flop of between upstate teachers and Long Island teachers, and how last year a number of upstate teachers were rated ineffective, and now all of a sudden they're not. But then last year there were a number of Long Island teachers who were not rated ineffective who all of a sudden are, and she basically shines a light on that and says, well, what happened? All of a sudden these people are wonderful and these people aren't wonderful anymore, or they stopped doing the job, or they started doing the job. And just once again shows how absurd these value-added models are and these algorithms are in trying to effectively take into consideration all the many variables that exist when we work with kids, and trying to boil that down to a number is really just an impossibility. That's Carol Burris, but the more exciting news for us today on State of Ed Podcast is that we have our first guest, and we're very happy to have with us Mary Craig, who is a librarian in Charlottesville, Virginia. So how you doing, Mary?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you very much for joining us. Can you give us a little bit of your background? Tell us what you've been up to these past years in education.
Sure. So I've been in education for about 20 years, and I've done different things. I've been a classroom math and science teacher. I've been a middle school librarian, and my current position is at an elementary school in Charlottesville, Virginia, where I serve students in kindergarten through 4th grade.
This is going to be really great, Nick, because we are 7 through 12 people, and we haven't yet had an elementary voice on the show. So it's really extra special to have Mary on here, because she gives us a whole new perspective on things.
I completely agree.
And one of the most impressive things that Mary has been a part of that I'm aware of is a program called Books on Bikes. Mary, can you share with our listeners a little bit about the Books on Bikes program?
Right. Books on Bikes is a program where a few of the classroom teachers and school librarians in Charlottesville, we pedal around Charlottesville in the summer on cargo bikes. We give children books and popsicles. We do not, it's not a lending thing. We give the children the books.
So let me interject right there. So
yeah.
As an administrator, I have about 4,000 questions that immediately come to mind. So in no particular order, who pays for all these materials and the ices that you're giving out to the kids?
Good question. Initially, when we got started, we didn't have any money, and we didn't really get any money from our district to do it. So we started a Kickstarter campaign.
Wow.
And so we had, we raised about $6,000 through Kickstarter to purchase cargo bikes and some books. We have people that donate books to us, and then we've also have a very good, tight relationship with the public library system in Charlottesville, and they have a group called Friends of the Library, which I think most public libraries have a group like that supports them, and they donate books to us.
Now, what's the age group that you're targeting with this program?
At school age, I mean K through 12.
Oh, you're running the full gamut.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. It's harder to draw the older kids in, but we do try, to get them when we go into the neighborhoods, because we have a rotating schedule. So we go out 2 nights a week, on Monday night and on Thursday night, from about 5 to 7 o'clock. And that's sort of a time when children are out and about in the neighborhood, and they're finished with their day camp, and so we found that we can find hubs of places where children congregate. And
so you're the ice cream man, basically.
Yeah, with books, right? Exactly. Yeah. And so we have about 4 different neighborhoods that we rotate through. So Monday night we'll go to 2, and then the next Thursday night we'll go through 2. And then we do it each week, and we have books for K, actually pre-K, preschool, all the way up through 12. But we really find that the majority of what we give out and what we see are younger children.
So do the parents know about this and they're coming out to retrieve the books for the kids, or are the kids just out playing and you come along with the bikes and distribute the books directly to the kids?
Well, when we started out, that was easy because we went to neighborhoods where the children knew us. Like we went to the neighborhoods that fed my school, so they knew me as their librarian. So it was
Okay.
easy. It was a bit more challenging when we went to neighborhoods where the children didn't know us. But our program has been in operation now for 3 years, so it's easier now. Because now we do a program at the end of the year where we send flyers home, so we let people know what we're doing. We've had a lot of local publicity, so, that's been easier. But we just show up with our bicycles, ringing our bells, and saying, books on bikes, and the kids just come running out to get their books and popsicles.
Wow,
And
that's incredible.
if you look on our Facebook page, we weekly post our visits, so you can kind of see by the pictures what's going on, in the captions.
Okay, we could put a link to that on
Yeah,
the show
that'd be
notes.
great.
Mark, I can share that I've had a great pleasure of doing this trip with her once last summer. So I was able to. I didn't use a bike though; I used a car. but I did watch, and it's just remarkable to see the enthusiasm that these young kids come out of their homes for. I mean, Mary, when I was there, basically you went to different low income housing
Yes.
neighborhoods.
Yes.
So you're pulling into subsidized housing with these apartments, and you go into one central area, and the kids just come running out. And in addition to what Mary and Rebecca and the rest of them are offering with the literacy and the books, the fact that they get to see their teachers over the summer and was just really nice to see. They were so excited to talk to them about what they've been doing, and it really, like she said, it takes away that summer lag for the young people. And there was even one kid who went running back into his apartment and was so excited he wanted to show one of his projects that he had completed because people were interested in how the young people were doing. It was really, it brought a tear to my eye. It was just incredible.
So, a huge part
That's
of that
amazing.
is the community connection that we're making. And, like Nick said, we're going into the neighborhoods and we're, sitting around with the kids and reading books with them. Something that, and I think not just in, we do visit low-income housing, but, I think Goodnight Moontime and, sitting with kids and reading at night, it's not just something that's not happening, in a low-income neighborhood. I think a lot of children aren't having that reading lap time. And that's one of the things we provide, not just giving the books, but sitting. And, there are many times, like after an event, if I see a kid somewhere, they recognize that, or they'll come. Now that we're getting a little bigger, we'll do events sometimes during the year just for the publicity or to raise money. And kids will come running to the library the next day and say, like, oh, I saw you in my neighborhood. Miss Craig was in my neighborhood.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's the connection piece is huge. And we have many parents that thank us, for coming and appreciate what we're doing.
That's amazing. So about how many books would you say you've given out in 3 years?
Ooh, that's a good question. One of the things we sort of don't focus on are numbers. There are so many times.
We're big on
we
data
just
over
didn't
here,
want to
Mary.
do that. So we don't really count books. We don't count kids. We just have a good time, pleasure reading, and training up the kids to love reading. Because we feel like if we start collecting data, it'll take the joy out of it. So a lot.
Right.
I mean, we fill up the baskets and we go. We don't really keep track of
It
numbers.
is a lot though, Mark, because I was only there for one trip. You probably, how many a week do you do?
How many neighborhoods or
How
books?
many visits a week, different neighborhoods?
Yeah, so we do anywhere from I said 4 different neighborhoods, but on our website we have them listed.
Okay.
It's actually, we try and do at least 4 a week, but that rotates through like about 8. And so
You do it for about 8 weeks?
yeah, we do it through the summer, and then, like, as a matter of fact, tonight, I'm here in New York, but my Books on Bikes team, my friends, went to like a local community swim that was happening in the neighborhood. Like the city opens up a pool for free for kids, and so like they'll go there and give out books.
Okay.
So we do events too.
So Mark, I'll answer your question.
Yeah.
It's in the thousands.
Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you, Nick. That's good. Yeah, and one of our goals is to help the children create home libraries. Many children don't have that. They don't have access to books. So access is
That's
a
right.
big part of this. It's like I said, it's not a lending library. We give the books to the children, and then they keep them in their homes. So we're kind of hoping to create that reading environment for them in their
Right.
house, print
Well,
rich
because
environment.
there is a tremendous amount of research that's been done. Just the physical act of having books in the home has an impact in the development of a child, and in terms of academics and reading comprehension and skills. And that doesn't even speak to how much time they spend reading. It's just the presence of the books means something. They're there. They have a place of hopefully somewhat importance. It's part of the house.
And Mark, did you happen to read David Brooks this week? Because
I
his
did.
art about the difference between reading concrete books and paper versus reading on mobile devices. And
I did.
yeah, so you might want to post that.
I did. I will post it, and that's something that we had spoken about a while back. I think I had said that I'm finding that my brain is being rewired in the way that I read. That I scan left and right, but seldom do I scan left, right, and then down, left, right, down, left, right, because I'm constantly flipping or flicking the text up to my eye level. So the muscles in my eyes are getting weak in terms of going down and up, and because I'm just going left and right.
And
And I'm already noticing it, and it's it's sort of scary how you can undo however many years of reading and muscle development in your eyes, and sort of undo it in a very short amount of time.
yeah, and when Mary's kids are reading the book she's delivering, they're not clicking on top 10 celebrities that lost 50 pounds on the side for the BuzzFeed article. So,
That's true.
But
That's true.
Mary, I was going to ask you: have any famous or noteworthy people in the area been contributing to the Books on Bikes program?
Well, we had Dave Matthews wear one of our T-shirts, but
Oh, that's amazing.
But he didn't. That's it. I mean,
So we don't want to give him credit.
well, I mean, he did wear a T-shirt. Well, the way that happened was that the bike shop where we purchased our bikes, they work on his bikes. So when we went it, well, so we like to use a local source stuff as much as we can, and so when we went in to pick up our bikes, the bike owner said, "Hey, I think Dave's coming in to pick up his bikes. You want to give me a T-shirt for him?" We're like, "Yeah, sure. Who knows where that'll go?"
All right, so just to go back to funding for a second. So you started this program 3 years ago, and you used Kickstarter, and you raised several $1,000s. But Nick just mentioned that you have thousands of books now that you're giving away, and you have a number of bicycles. Clearly, the 6,000 has to be gone by this point. So what other methods of fundraising have you been able to come up with?
We do receive some monetary donations from generous community people. One thing that we did this year, we have a festival in Charlottesville. It's called the Tom Tom Founders Festival. That's put on by a group, and it's sort of a festival that creates innovation. It celebrates creativity and innovation, a little bit along the makerspace idea, of people just kind of creating things and being entrepreneurs. So we had the opportunity to present our idea during a nonprofit pitch night. And so we got up on stage and we had like 3 minutes or 6 minutes to present our idea and talk about what we did. And we actually won that competition that night. So that
Wow.
brought in about $7,000. We were like the crowd favorite that night.
Oh, that's
so that
amazing.
Yeah, it was great.
Have you ever thought of reaching out to, I know like Nightly News does a whole segment on, people who are doing good deeds and giving back and contributing. You could probably get some publicity that way, and try to raise some more money that way. Of course, we can put a link if you'd like to something for where people can go and contribute. But there are probably some other alternatives to fundraising.
Well, that'd be great because we'll definitely, kind of like to start off each summer with a good chunk of money to kind of fund the popsicles and the books and, other things that come up, like, things that we do publicity. We have a parade in the beginning of the summer. So there are different expenses that we have.
That's amazing. That's really amazing. And now, so you're 3 years in. I just wonder after, a few more years, if you'll start to see this bear fruit, or maybe you already have.
Oh, we already have. Yeah,
so
we already
I know
have.
you don't like data when it comes to this
Yeah.
program because it takes some of the, the love out of it. But We're so jaded here in New York where everything has to be broken down into something that you could attribute to a data point. But I'm just wondering what kind of results you're seeing on assessments and in classroom learning and discussions and et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, we're very data driven in Virginia too. It's like it is here, and I would say that the closest thing that we have to that would be, teachers that have given Rebecca some feedback and saying, I know so and so student, they were here at the end of the year this year. Well, when they came back to school, they were, reading at a higher grade level. So
And that almost never happens
yeah,
because
I
of the
mean,
slide.
sure, with the slide, and so can we say that it was books on bikes? We know that we saw those particular children. We know we saw them every week, and we know that like what type of books they wanted. So that's a big part of what we do is getting to know the children. And I know all of us as educators know that the way to get kids reading is to find what they're passionate about, find out what they want to learn about, what they want to read, and get those books into their hands. And so that's a lot of what we do.
Well, it's interesting that you said that because I'd love to discuss this with you and get your thoughts. So you just talked about getting kids to read the things that they're interested in. And this has been a huge bone of contention and a source of tremendous controversy here with Common Core, and I'm sure in Virginia and elsewhere across the country. And it has to do with the close reading, which is basically the argument has been made that in order to effectively do close readings, which take a tremendous amount of time, that it's almost acceptable for students not to read entire texts. And there's been a greater emphasis on nonfiction versus fiction. And we're still choosing the books predominantly that the students read. So what are some of your thoughts in terms of reading for pleasure versus reading for academics? And I don't know if you're familiar with the close reading strategy there as well.
Well, I think academic versus pleasure reading is something I did want to talk about because, what we emphasize is pleasure reading. And what the kids do in school is academic reading. They're reading for work. And so we're trying to get them to see the other side of reading, that reading is not work. Reading can be an adventure. Reading can take you places. It's not the same as the academic or working reading that they're doing in school. It's a different avenue to reading.
And Mark, I would interject that when I was on the Books on Bikes trip, there's no question I was trying to push the president's books as much as I could. And I got a few takers.
I mean, when we do have kids, it'll say, do you have any nonfiction books? That's what they want to read.
But I have to say...
I heard the kid say, you didn't bring that man again, did you?
But they had such an incredible variety of books. And I could tell that Mary and Rebecca and the other volunteers... it didn't matter to them what the kids selected. I think when you bring up this discussion, doesn't the age level depend? I mean, on academic reading versus pleasure reading. Why would we have third graders and fourth graders all have to read the exact same thing? We want to develop their skills to read, and the best way I think to do that is by them reading topics that are pleasurable to them.
Free choice reading.
That's my opinion.
Right. Well, I think, and Mary certainly could speak to this better than I, but in the earlier grade levels, they do have more choice. Those choices really start to dry up as they get older, for I guess a number of reasons. Just take New York State curriculum, alone. There's a certain requirement in terms of how many works by Shakespeare, how many works of this, how many works of that. So we're limited. And then the other side of it is the district makes a purchase of however many hundreds or thousands of copies of a particular book, and they don't want to just use it once. They want to get their money's worth, so they wind up mandating certain works for monetary reasons, which it doesn't work conceptually or pedagogically, but it does work financially and logistically. So as they get older, I think you run into additional problems.
I think, one of the things that I'm thinking of in the younger grades, what we see is the testing with reading. and the pushing of, kids being pulled out and tested, what level are they on? I mean, that certainly, I think, kills some of the joy of reading. And that's why I think school libraries are so important. It's so important that we fund them, because that is where children have free choice of reading. I mean, even in the classroom, yeah, they probably have more choice than the upper grades, but I mean, at the lower grades, they're more faced with that testing all the time, and what grade level are they on, and remediation, that they need, and intervention. So their reading time is spent in an intervention or remediation to get them on grade level. So that, I think that's the joy kill there for reading for the lower grades. I mean, I'm not saying like that doesn't have to be done. I mean, there has to be some attention put to that. It's not going to be like some magic world where everybody picks their own pre-choice book, and some kids do need the remediation or the intervention. But I think it's important to provide that free choice through our school libraries.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, they should associate reading as a positive,
right?
Not as a test evaluation.
Yes.
Right. I think we all agree with that.
You're probably concerned that too much of it is the negative.
Well, I was going to ask, do you find that there's been an erosion on the elementary school level of non-ELA and math classes and remedial classes? In other words, are they still getting a robust science curriculum? Are they still getting a robust history curriculum? Are they still doing art and music and everything else?
Well, they are, but I think that the majority of concern is in math and reading, because that's where the testing is concentrated. With math and reading, I mean, science and social studies are there, but I think, because they're not tested, our Virginia Standards of Learning, there's not as much emphasis put on it.
And it's interesting that, Mary is talking about the emphasis on math and English in a state that is not aligned with the Common Core standards.
Right.
So, it's pervasive.
I know you have a background in math and science, as well as working in the library aspect. So, what kind of push do you see happening in Virginia in terms of STEM? I know here it's been all the rage, and I just want to get a sense if it's similar in Virginia.
It is similar in Virginia, and I can just speak a little bit about what's happening in my school district. And I know at the high school level and the middle school level, not upper elementary 4 or 5, but 6, 7, that they recently have put in STEM laboratories. A huge.
What do they consist of?
A lot of technology. I haven't really been there, and I haven't toured them.
Okay.
Because I am in elementary, so there hasn't been a huge STEM emphasis, I would say, in elementary in terms of redesign of schools and STEM laboratories being put in. That has more been at upper levels.
Yeah, well, you don't want to ruin the surprise with STEM. You want to wait as long as possible before you introduce it, right? Isn't that proper pedagogy? Sorry, if I don't know how often you listen or if you've ever listened to this podcast, but I have a tendency to be a little sarcastic, Mary, so I apologize.
That works. That's fine. Yeah. So I know a little bit about what's going on, but it certainly is a big push in Virginia too, for STEM.
So let me go back to the library for a second, if I may. There's been a tremendous technological shift in libraries everywhere. So how are you feeling the emphasis of technology or the influence of technology in the library, and has it been for better or for worse?
I think it depends on. Do you want me to talk specifically about Virginia, my district? Because,
Sure.
Library funding is very different school library funding is different depending on where you're at, and what librarians have access to in terms of staffing and equipment is very different depending on where you're at and how important that district sees the librarian's role and the library program as integral to classroom instruction and supporting the classroom.
Well, so even instead of talking about maybe specific to your district, just in terms of the role of the librarian, how do you think that's changed with the technology that's been added in the course of your 20-year career.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's positive. It's a positive way. I mean, I'm of the school where, children will always need books, especially picture books. That question is never going away. And, even with e-readers, when they came, that's huge. And what I see with children is, especially when I was at middle school, some kids would come to the library and say, I don't want an e-reader, I want a book. And I don't want a paperback, I want a hardback. So it's a very, individual choice, I think, even with kids. And libraries, just like anything in education, we all have to grow, we all have to change, we all have to move along and, accept the new technologies or whatever innovations come along. I mean, that's just part of our profession, is staying current on, what is new. So, I think in terms of what we do as librarians, certainly is research, and Nick is talking about Google Docs. I mean, we use that a lot.
So the Dewey Decimal System, is that still at the forefront?
yeah, I mean,
how do you know where the books are, Nick?
Yeah, we still have it, but we have a lot more let's just say that we have a lot more non-print and digital content that we didn't have. So that has increased, the digital content and access. That's another thing, access to technology, depending on where your school is and how much money that district has.
Right. So what proportion of students get their books through e-readers through the library, and what percentage or what proportion get them through traditional hardcover or soft-covered books?
It's very small at my school. I'm mostly we use the technology for our, research projects and doing things like that. I don't, I have some nooks that children can check out, but it's very small. The majority of
okay. So you actually would give them the
books,
actual reader.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, we don't have it here, but I'm thinking how wonderful it would be for a student to be able to have his or her own e-reader or tablet or even their phone and be able to take out a book from the library electronically.
Mary, in your district, do the high school kids get Google Chrome books or
some form of tablet?
We're doing some changes right now. They've had a tablet and one-to-one initiative there for a long time, and they have tablets. I'm not sure if they switched over to Chrome, because this year they've got something new at the upper levels.
But every kid does receive a tablet.
One-to-one initiative, yeah.
They do. Okay.
Yeah.
See, we don't have that yet.
Yeah, another thing that's happening now in libraries, it's a big movement, is makerspace.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I'm not familiar with that particular program.
I wasn't either, Mark, but it's an interesting program.
Yeah, that's a pretty big initiative, and it's nice to see that it's starting in libraries, which are a place for children to ask questions and answer them. Well, I'll give you an example. Okay, so in my library, what I did was I had something called Maker Monday Club after school. And so there's a parent at my school who's a professor at UVA, at University of Virginia, and he's an engineering professor. So he got a group of students to come over at the library in the afternoons and work with the children on creating things, engineering based. So it was very STEM, very STEM oriented. So they worked with these kits called Little Bits, where the children had projects where they built circuits and created things, So each week, the students would come to my library and have a question or have a project for the kids to make something. One week they brought in like all the spaghetti and tape and had them build a bridge that would support a dictionary.
Oh, wow.
Then the other week, like I said, they had these little bits where the goal of the students was they had to make a pet out of the little electronic pieces like circuit boards with flashing lights and, wagging tails and things like that.
Oh, wow.
So that was one thing that I did in my library. And there are a lot of different ways that libraries are doing it. But I think the main idea is to just get kids thinking beyond being like told what to do, like have them come to the library, have an idea of something they want to make, have the guidance to figure out how to make it and how to get the materials to do it.
Mark, you want to know what it isn't?
I would love to know what it isn't.
What Makerspace is not is students sitting down in a classroom every day and copying notes off of a PowerPoint for 43 minutes. That's what it's not.
So it's effective.
I just learned about it talking to Mary. this
That's really
afternoon,
interesting.
and it just seems like it's a very higher level, creative, innovative, project oriented program. There is an awful lot about it on the web. I think, especially, when you think of like talented and gifted programs, Mark, everybody has their own. I think Makerspace is the type of, it's similar to that. But of course, I think we all realize talented and gifted programs don't only have to benefit the talented and the gifted, because I really think all kids have talents and gifts. They just don't all get to show them in our traditional classroom settings.
I think that's very well said.
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly agree with that.
Yeah, and there's no question. I mean, I actually kind of ended my 8th grade class with that this year, and I tried to say to kids, don't put yourselves down by saying you're not smart at this. It's the whole Sir Ken Robinson, system. You're all great at something. It's just finding out what it is that you're great at.
That's right. And, I also have to give some credit to Carol Dweck, because she uses a very powerful word in her book, the word yet. So you may not be excellent at something yet, but that doesn't mean that you can't be, or that you won't be moving forward. And I think that's a really, really wonderful way to create a positive mindset which is, of course, Dweck is all about the mindset.
Well, this was a great discussion, Mary. I can't thank you enough.
Yeah, so we'd like to invite Mary to stick around for the Methods Lab segment, which our topic is summer assignments this week. And so, Nick, I know you give a summer assignment for your AP U.S. History class. So what, in your estimation, what is the purpose of the summer assignment?
Yeah, well, this is something I do feel pretty strongly about. I think we all kind of associate summer assignments with English and having kids read over the summer, which is what we just finished talking to Mary about. But I think over the last, let's say 2 decades, I feel as if summer assignments have morphed into a way for teachers to cover the first 3 chapters of the curriculum. And I think that's a very poor use of summertime.
Can you give us an example of how you utilize the summer assignment to motivate interest in your course?
Sure. So I'm in an interdisciplinary program with the English class, so it lends itself nicely. The 2 AP classes, we each assign 1 book. I mean, it's a joint assignment, and we change it up every year or 2. So I know one of the ones we really enjoyed was when we assigned Freakonomics for the kids to read.
Love that book.
Yeah, and what we do is, so I think one year we did Freakonomics and maybe the autobiography of Malcolm X.
Okay.
Another year we did The Things They Carried, which is Timothy O'Brien, all about the Vietnam War. And we give them 1 essay, well, I guess 2 essays, but for each book. But those essays are no more than 250 to 350 words. We really want it to just be 1 page. We don't want it to be something that is turning kids off. You can go online and search teacher summer assignments, and when I read them, I almost feel as if they're trying to get kids to drop the class. And I just don't see the purpose of that. I like to engage kids in the beginning of the school year. So we really try to give them something they enjoy. Now, sometimes we fail, and if it's a book that really doesn't, particularly go over too well, then we change it up. Freakonomics was probably the most successful we had.
Because Freakonomics is broken up into digestible chunks.
Right.
It's not a narrative, so you can read, 1 piece and then sort of skim the next one and read the 3rd one and still get a very good sense of what the book is.
And
as opposed to
Well, and I can't tell you how many kids then came back and said, "Oh, thank you so much. My college professor was so pleased that we had read the book." Now it was so successful. As you know, our district then put it into the senior year.
That's right.
So we had to take it out because if any kids were going to be seniors in those classes, they would, have already read it. So that's why we don't use it as a summer assignment anymore. So this summer,
so you were a victim of your own success,
right? Which is fine because as long as they get to read it, it doesn't matter what year. So then this year we are doing The Overachievers, which is a book about high school students and the stress that they feel.
Wow.
Yeah, it's.
I'm not familiar with that one.
Oh, it's maybe 2007, and it focuses on kids from Long Island, but we thought it would be a great way, that whole junior year and how kids feel the pressure,
Sure.
for kids to kind of listen to her argument, because the English class is really a course in argument, AP language,
Right.
and let the kids discuss and debate whether or not the argument she makes is, first of all, is it valid, is it effective, that kids are feeling too stressed to join every club, go abroad, for a service project, and take every AP class and what it's doing to kids. So it's well written, and it's well reviewed. Then the other book,
That's really interesting.
Yeah. Then the other book I assigned for the first time is Profiles in Courage, and that's the John F. Kennedy book that focuses on 8 different individuals throughout history. And the reason why we decided to do this is because in a presidential election year, we really wanted kids to think about what does make a great leader, what qualities make somebody a great leader. And these are people, some of them they will have heard of, John Quincy Adams, but there's a lot of the people in there that they will not have heard before. And I think Kennedy did a great job of highlighting why these men were special.
Is Donald Trump one of the 8?
Donald Trump, I don't think made this edition, but I'm hearing he's going to be up in the running for the next one.
Oh, well, he most certainly should be.
So,
So I'd like to bring Mary into the conversation. So, Mary, on the elementary school level, are there summer assignments, or is it simply just the summer reading list?
Summer reading lists. We have there are not summer assignments. There's remediation in terms of summer school, but that's really different than what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I can't speak to what they do in my district at the higher levels. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I just promote the summer reading list. Our city schools, we have a summer reading list, and I give out the one to the public library too.
How many books do they have to read?
It's not even a requirement. It's an optional program. So it's just a list of books in different genres that the children can choose from, and they don't have to specifically read those books, but they just have a little sort of a paper, with the books on it, and then they can write down different books that they read.
Do you
And
find...
well, I have to tell you, I don't believe in giving children prizes for reading, and I don't believe in any of that reward system for reading. I don't believe in AR. I don't think kids should be given rewards for reading. And that's sort of what this program promotes, because they can read the books, bring the list back, at an early level. I read this many books and get a prize for it, and I don't think that it works that way.
well,
Why are you so opposed to it, just out of curiosity? I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I'm interested to hear your thought.
I think it should be more intrinsic. I don't think their children are going to learn to love reading by getting a prize. I think it has to be more intrinsic in them getting books that they really love.
and Mark, I'll pose this question, and you as the administrator, there's a lot of controversy in terms of summer assignments on how you evaluate it when you come home. Now, Mary's talking about pure enrichment and voluntary, but most of these summer assignments on the high school level, they're mandatory. And I do believe that there was a local court case on Long Island.
There was.
That might have been Island Trees, but I can't say that for certain. That the court said you can't evaluate a student on something that hasn't been covered in the classroom setting. So
Right. Well, I believe I'm not an expert on this particular case, but I believe the court basically said the student has to have access to the teacher,
right,
for either remediation or for clarity, or to have questions asked and addressed or answered and addressed. But they just can't be left out on an island. Here's your book. Here's a piece of paper with questions, and and here's the test. And now that's part of your grade when you come back, without any kind of interaction with the teacher or access to the teacher along the way. So I think that was really the highlight that the court emphasized, was that there has to be some type of interaction between teacher and student,
right,
in order to make that summer assignment a legitimate one.
Yeah, well, I think that, well, it goes back to my original, what's your purpose for giving a summer assignment? And to me, the purpose should be to create enthusiasm for the class and to inspire the kids to want to learn even more. I don't think it should be something that's overwhelming. I don't think it should be something that takes away all of their time. I don't think it should be something that they feel inclined to have to copy or plagiarize or just do it to
Right.
get done. That's not going to help anybody either. And so that's just my thoughts. But again,
Right.
this is just from my subject. I just know in social studies, and I think in science, that's become more the norm. I mean, I'm telling you, Mark. I know you're out of the classroom a few years. You should just search what some of these assignments look like. It seems like it would take the whole summer to finish.
Obviously, that's not. I think we'd all agree that's not the real purpose of it, or what at least shouldn't be the real purpose of it. It should be an opportunity to have that additional enrichment that you would love to be able to have time for during the school year, but you just don't because it's the school year, and it gives you a little bit extra flexibility, a little bit additional time to find something that hopefully the kids will really be able to dive into and find some value in, and it shouldn't be just painful and something that involves a tremendous number of parts to it, and like you said, something that could take a whole summer in order to complete.
Right. Well, that's great.
Not to mention, on the other end, what teacher wants to sit there when the school year first begins and have to be saddled with pages and pages and pages of these things to grade
Right.
and get back in a decent amount of time when the year is kind of up and running? I
That's
think
true.
there's a little bit of I guess masochism on the other end of it also.
Oh, great.
We're gonna end with me saying masochism. That's the segue.
Read on.
No, the segue is I just want to thank Mary so much because I think you've really added tremendously to our podcast here, and you've set the bar very high for future guests.
Well, you're certainly welcome, and thank you for the opportunity and letting me share our passion for getting kids to enjoy reading and develop good, healthy attitudes toward reading and have positive experiences with reading, because I think that's what is needed.
Sounds good
Yeah,
to me.
I agree. And you and your colleagues are doing really wonderful work there.
Thank you.
And we certainly wish you all the best in continuing this wonderful program. And if you'd like to find out more about Books on Bikes, we will put a link on in our show notes for that. We'll also have some links for the other articles and blog posts that we discussed earlier on in the show. If you would like to follow us on the web, you can find us at stateofedpodcast.com. We're also available in the iTunes store under the podcast section. Just search for State of Ed Podcast. You could also find, if you have a question for us or you'd like to suggest a topic, you can do so at ask@stateofedpodcast.com. We're also on Twitter at SOE Podcast. And that wraps up our show. So again, a very special thanks to Mary. Thank you very much, Nick, for a very enlightening conversation this week.
You too, Mark. Have a good week, and I will talk to you soon.
Take care.